podcast for those who suffer, which is everyone.
It's a space where we can speak honestly about what it feels like to be in desolate places without losing hope.
Welcome to In the Thicket.
We've all heard it said that God is a good father who provides for his children. And though we might believe this much of the time, that belief can really be tested in times where we're lacking something, whether it's monetarily or in relationships or in healing or whatever. Catherine Richard is our guest this week, and she shares with us about a recent experience where she really had to trust in God's providence. She shares about the pain of that and the challenge of it, and she also shares about how God brought a deeper understanding of her own heart to her during that time. We hope that this episode is a blessing to you in your own walk with the Lord and in trusting Him.
Hello, everybody. I am Erin Kinsella. I'm a consecrated virgin from Ottawa/Toronto.
I'm Nicole Richard Williams, and I am a university professor in Nashville. And you'll notice we're missing Rachel today. Rachel is stuck in traffic, basically. And so she's not able to join us.
Which is kind of funny because it's like
sorry.
the traffic between Toronto and DC. So I feel like that's
so
also so it's not just like she's in like
stuck
rush
in
hour.
traffic. Yeah. And then we like couldn't delay it by 15 minutes or something. It's like, no, she's like 3 hours delayed and we're recording right now. So that's
funny. Yes, sorry to interrupt. And our lovely guest today.
Yeah. So we have someone with us. And this is, I was trying to see like you might notice a resemblance between her and Erin. Just joking. Not her. Between her and myself.
That's so funny.
I was like, we all have glasses on. No, so Catherine is my sister, and
yay!
And I love her very much, and she's one of my favorite sisters, in fact.
Which is funny because Nicole has two other sisters and a brother, so this
they're
is
all
like
one of my favorite sisters. Well, except for my brother, he's my favorite brother.
That's nice.
One, yeah, so
that would be funny if he was your favorite sister. I'm sure he would appreciate that.
Yeah. But Catherine, do you want to just tell us real quick just who you are and what you're doing and where you live and the basics?
Yeah. So I am based in Ottawa, which is funny, Erin. I don't think I've ever seen you since I moved to Ottawa a year ago, but
100%.
Nice to see you now here.
Yeah, that's right. Virtually.
I'm in Ottawa and I moved here a year ago. I moved here to attend the University of Ottawa. So I'm in my second year of my master's of music in piano performance at the University of Ottawa. And before that, I was in Saskatoon and I lived there for 4 years and I was teaching piano there the whole time. And then before that, I was in Winnipeg, which is where I was born. And
we were housemates.
A journey. Nicole was my first ever roommate. This is true. Is she actually? Maybe. Well, you know what? Daniel might have been my first ever roommate. Yeah, but you're my first ever roommate I moved out with.
No, because Nicole is older than Daniel, so technically, if you will consider Erin, your family roommates.
Yeah.
Actually, Erin, you're right. Nicole was my first roommate.
It was, me and Cecile and Catherine, we shared a bedroom until,
right?
We shared it. That's true. The three of us. Yeah. For a little while.
Yeah.
I thought you just said we shared a bed and I was like, wow, we that's some real.
No, we did.
Correct.
Actually a bed? Oh, when
three
you
of
were
us.
little. When you were little. Yes. Okay. Because I was picturing like teenager girls like huddled in the corner around a coal stove.
Yeah.
Like eating crusts of bread. Anyways, I was like, but that doesn't, I've been to your house before. That image doesn't sound familiar. Okay, listen, Catherine, how do you feel about being our first guest of season 3?
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
It's an unexpected honor.
And we obviously super intentionally chose you to be our first guest of the year. Nicole is laughing because usually so much of the stuff that we do when we're planning happens by happenstance, but there's always a reason that the Lord has behind things. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So no pressure, but you have to knock it out of the park tonight. That's all.
Like, no problem. I expect great things.
Funny. Sorry, I feel a little ridiculous. I can share with everybody that I have COVID currently at this moment. It's on the way out. I'm on like my isolation ends today, and then tomorrow I'm safe to go lick whoever I want in public. But the like, so anyways, it was Thanksgiving weekend for Canada, and so I spent it in my room by myself, which was actually a gift. So I'm it was nice.
Everyone was thankful that you were in your room by yourself, probably.
That's right. Exactly.
So you gave Thanksgiving to
that's right.
all of Canada.
As opposed to giving them COVID. That's right.
Oh boy. That's good.
Well,
man. Well, I think we've all had COVID then within the last few months, then the three of us, because I had it I had it recently, end of August. I had so this is what happened is I got a little cold and then I tested for COVID and it came back negative. So I was like, okay. So I taught in a mask all week. And then at the end of the week was feeling really crappy, took another COVID test. And then that one was positive. And then I had to realize, and then I rested. So it was rough, you know, it was like my back hurt, your muscles all hurt. And I had about 3 weeks until I felt like normal, you know, and that's with being vaccinated and all that kind of stuff too. So anyway,
I fortunately just had a vaccination like 2 weeks before I got infected, which is actually like prime coverage time.
Oh, so right.
2 weeks after you receive a vaccination, your like immunity is at its height, and then it starts to. Anyway, so it was good because I really was not that sick. Like I was like tired and whatever, but I don't even have a cough. So
that's good.
Yeah,
that is good.
I know.
So you done COVID right.
I didn't. I know,
like
COVID
you just
right.
like work the system.
Everybody just needs to schedule when they're infected, and then that's really how you
get
should
a vaccine
approach it.
For that.
That's right.
Yeah, perfect.
Anyway, I just thought I'd share that. Oh, sorry. I was going to share just because if people are like wondering why I'm just, it's nice to talk to human beings. That's all. I said if I'm a little eager in the conversation, it's just nice to see faces. That's all. Yeah. That's all. Sorry, Catherine. What were you going to say?
No, I'm going to drop what I was going to say, and I'm going to say a different thing instead, which was that I was just, what I'll say now is that when I had COVID, I had it the week before my final recital of my first year. So at the end of both years of your master's in performance, you give like a major recital. And there's no difference between first year, second year. Like they're just both equally sort of weighted.
Okay.
So it was a huge deal. And it was the week before my recital. It was like 9 days before, and I tested positive for COVID. I spent the whole week in bed, and it was like legitimately the biggest gift because I needed that rest. I needed, like, it was even good for me as a performer. It was good for me. So I don't want to give away what our topic for today is for the podcast yet, because you guys haven't said it, but it was an experience of what we'll talk about today.
Okay.
Definitely.
Good. Yeah. So that seems like the perfect segue.
Well, today that's perfect. Thanks, Catherine. You just see, she's already hitting it out of the park.
That's right.
She's working this episode like a pro.
I've actually given practice podcast the last 10 nights. So like I'm on my A game right now.
Nice. Beautiful. Yeah. Sweet.
Oh, that's good. So our topic today, is about God's providence. And like Catherine, you're mentioning of the things that seem, that are hard and that are difficult. And then somehow the Lord is working through that or uses it for good. So we'll dive right in. Catherine, I mean, you're my sister. Catherine and I are close. All of our siblings are close. Geographically far. We have a little family group chat, and our youngest sister was posting that we spent Thanksgiving, the 7 of us, in 7 different cities across 3 different countries.
Oh my gosh.
We're like, so that's where we're at, but we keep in touch regularly. So Catherine, you went through something that was difficult and that kind of called on or gave you an experience, I guess, of eventually of God's providence. And so I wonder if you'd share that with us. I actually asked Catherine when she was like in the middle of the hardest part of this, was like, hey, you're suffering, want to be on our podcast? And she was basically like, let me think about it. And then a few weeks later, she was like, yeah, sure.
She just wrap things up a little and then,
literally, I was like, let me see if my life works out. If it works out,
I mean, really, there's a pragmatic portion of that. Like, you can't come on the podcast and just cry for an hour because that's not really going to be helpful for people. So, I mean, prudent on your part. So thank you for that. Yeah. Sorry, go ahead. Share.
Yeah. Yeah. And I just want to say too, that like what Nicole kind of was alluding to is that she and I have shared actually a very close bond. Like we are sisters. There's a closeness because of that. But I think that we discovered a very similar approach and similar and also complementary, which means differences too, but approach to our lives and our spiritual lives. And so, yeah, like that's part of our relationship and part of what helps Nicole to know all these things that are happening in my life. And yeah, so yeah, I'm just going to dive right into it. So
Beautiful.
I'm in school and came back to this master's after 6 years away. So I'd done my undergrad, graduated, worked for 6 years, came back to school. And so like a huge part of my decision to come back to school involved finances, because it's such a significant shift to being a student after working that long. And I had quite a lot saved up. And U Ottawa was able to offer me like full tuition coverage and a good sort of TA position coming into my first year.
Nice.
So it was great. Like money is still really tight. A lot of my savings went away anyways, because even that money doesn't go very far. But that really helped to make the transition to being a student again easier. And I wasn't really worried about finances. And so coming into the second year, the long and short of it is that I found out that I'd understood that I was going to have my tuition covered again, and that I'd have a full TA position again. And I didn't. That's sort of what it all came down to.
Okay.
And it was this really frustrating thing for me where it was a mix of like information being phrased in a really obtuse way that created misunderstanding, and a mixture of that with me just misunderstanding on my own terms, and not fully reading the details and the nitpicks and thinking I had, but not actually having done, which is so humbling because like, like this is just read, like, read the rules of the game before you play it kind of thing. Right. And so I like all this information. So I found out, all this information came to me in one afternoon that I like didn't have tuition paid for. I wasn't going to receive the funding I thought I was going to get. And so all of a sudden I was looking at my bank account and I was like, I don't have enough. I literally don't have enough to cover tuition to pay for my life. And I don't know what I'm going to do. And what like struck me was that when that afternoon, like once I like researched and like also received information from other people and put all the puzzle pieces together, I wept and 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 I cried and I cried and I cried. And it really felt like one of those things. I wonder if you guys can relate to this, where there's like some things that touch on something that's so deep inside of us that the tears are just like they come and then they're constant. Right. And I remember talking to my boyfriend and I was just like, I know that this is one of those things, but I don't know what that thing is that is being like triggered in this
like
way.
pushed on. Yeah.
Like
right.
I haven't experienced it in this particular area.
Like it was an objectively stressful thing. So there would be tears, but you're saying it was not only that like this is stressful, but there's something, it's touching some deeper wound or insecurity or something. And I know what you mean, where it's like, you're like, I literally can just keep crying. It's like an open channel of tears that will just continue until I go to sleep or whatever it is. Like, because it's just touching something so deep.
Exactly. And I have experienced that experience with other things that I know are like key areas of struggle or woundedness in my life. So that was just like, I didn't quite know why this was being that, right? And so, it was just this really wild thing that I had to just like pull up my bootstraps and figure it out, or that's how it felt to me, which is I think an important distinction. That I needed, like I think for a couple days I just was kind of floundering, and then realized, okay, like how do I make money? I know how to teach. I can find ways to find piano students here in Ottawa, and like did all the math to figure out how many students I needed to support my costs and all this, and like created a really strict budget and started doing all that, and that started to move forward, and slowly students began to respond. And so I started out, so that this all happened like the week before classes started. So like I started working at that, classes started. And I think by like the third week in September, I had about half my budget accounted for with students. So a relief. I was really grateful for that.
Yeah.
But it still wasn't enough. And I just want to take a little tangent to explain, like, so the TA position was an important part of that. And I'd expected and been told I would receive a particular position in the school this year.
Mm.
And then was told that I would get it, but then that position was going to be about half the amount of hours that it was last year, which was like a shock to me.
Okay.
And then like more things progressed. And then I found out that they weren't going to give it to me at all because there was just all kinds of politics and things.
Mm.
So I had wanted this particular position. I liked the work that I did with it last year. It was like accompanying the operas at my school, which was just fun. So it's a couple evenings a week of work, but it's like interesting and it's very interactive. But yeah, that was the position that like they had thought they were going to give to me and then realized they couldn't and then realized they shouldn't. And so I went to a different student, which is like, it's fine. It actually is fine. So I got to
I love that you say that it is actually is fine. Like, it's fine. And it's
Yeah.
fine. It's fine. But I'm like, oh no, it's actually fine.
Yeah, it actually is fine. It wasn't that kind of fine for a little bit, but it actually is fine.
Yeah.
But I got to the second week of September and like kind of, had about half the budget accounted for, had exactly enough students that if I had received that smaller version of the TA position that I had thought I would get, it would have been perfect. If I had that position plus students, amazing. But I didn't have that position, so I just had the students. But then second week of September, I think maybe it was the third week of September, a different TA position came up and my amazing piano teacher, who's also my supervisor and a great advocate for me, saw this position come up at like 11:30 p.m. on a Friday and was like, please give this to Catherine. And it ended up being exactly the right amount of hours to fit in that missing gap in my budget. And it's actually a much better position because it doesn't require me to work in the evenings, which is good because I'm now teaching in the evenings. So it really like it worked out. So those like those are the details of the situation as they went, right?
I feel like I'm picturing in my head like that's like the surface of the lake, or that's like the surface of the river. Like that's what you can see and what's actually happening. But there's like the whole depths, like you were kind of hinting at, like that are underneath. And that's like where so much of the, you know what I mean? Like so much of the whatever, all the things of our daily life or whatever of the details or the really procedural stuff is like nothing compared to the depths of the inner stuff that we go through when we encounter hardships. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, totally.
I'm thinking, folks, I'm sure pretty much everyone's gone through a time of like financial challenge or different things like that, or who knows, housing, or trying to figure out like being in transition or jobs or whatever it is, where there's some sort of loss of security, right? And I'm wondering, like, you kind of touched on that, like this touched on something deeper. Did you start to get some insight into what was being stirred up there? What was making it hard,
Yeah, totally. So I think two things come to mind immediately. So one of them was, so that question of security, like it really challenged me to ask, where does my security come from? Like, and it was really shocking to me that so much of my security in the last, like in my early adult life, came from finances. I didn't think about it. It didn't feel like it was a big factor, but it's because I always had enough. Right.
Yeah.
And that like really brought up a host of other questions. I remember going to adoration kind of within that first week of all this sort of falling apart. And I was so pissed off at the Lord. And I was like, Jesus, like, was my life really so terrible before when I had enough? Like, did you really have to like why does it matter where my security comes from? Why does that matter? Because I felt like I was pretty good before. I didn't feel like this was an issue. Like, and so like something that came out of that is like when the Lord is allowing an area of suffering or struggle, why is he doing it? And I think that like a struggle for me is one of the ways that I see God that is unhealthy or not, that is not true. I often see him as like the divine coach or the divine teacher. Whereas like someone who like cares a lot about you and really wants to push you and really wants to give you these challenges so you can learn how to work through them. And like, like there is some truth to that. The Lord allows these struggles, but like, why does he
Right.
do that? Right.
Mm.
And my struggle in that moment of prayer was just thinking like, is it just because you want me to be better as a human? Because that feels really unloving. Like why, like, why is it so important? And I eventually like realized, or the Lord reminded me that like, he doesn't want anything in between me and him. He wants total unity with me, right? Because also that total unity with my unity with the Lord is what brings meaning and purpose to all the parts of my life, good and bad, right? Like he is what creates the security that I need. But if I'm away from him, I'm going to be looking to all these other things, which are sand, right? And he's the rock. And so it impacted my relationship with him, because I needed to be reminded that he wants me close to his heart. And so I think like part of why he was allowing this to come up was that it was like where like this problem of like putting my security in finances or in the respect of others or in my achievements, like all these things are shifting sand and like fall apart really easily. And he doesn't want me to fall apart easily, right? So in this experience of something falling apart, he wanted me to draw him closer to himself because he loves me. Like he actually loves me. And it's not just because he wants me to be a better person or a more whole person, though he does want that. He wants all that. But like at the core of it is just this, like this draw of love, you know?
Yeah, that's beautiful.
It's beautiful. And it's like, he doesn't want us to, like you're saying, like have our illusions of security in things that actually are not secure, because he wants us to be actually secure in him, because that's the only thing that's really truly real. And that is a gift, but it's so hard because he's, we have the Eucharist, but it's not like, Jesus isn't going and working at a job that makes 6 figures so that he can support us at, like Erin, you're a consecrated, I don't know, this is interesting. I want maybe like, what's your, thinking of the security of trusting the Lord as a person who is like married to Jesus in that way, or has that different kind of relationship. This must be something you think about too. I'm curious of your reflections on that.
Yeah. I feel like all while you're talking, I'm like, oh gosh, this is like hitting deep parts of me, even because I had like, when you're talking about the like crying thing. So last year, when was it? December. So I'm long-term disability right now because of fibromyalgia stuff. So so I haven't been able to work. And at the time I was like in Ottawa, I'd been in Ottawa for like a year. I had not been able to find a family doctor at all. And I had done everything, like I'd done everything possible to try and find a family doctor. And my insurance company knew that, but then I got a message from them saying that they were cutting off my insurance because I didn't have a family doctor to complete my medical forms. And I had tried to pay people to complete the medical forms. Like I had tried everything to try and do that. And so I was like, I got that message and I was just like I cried and I couldn't stop crying because I was like, I have nothing. Like I have nothing, Lord. Like without this, I have no way to pay for, I can't drive my car. I can't, like, thank God I'm living with my parents, but I can't give them anything. I was supporting some of my sister's stuff because that's like a whole big complicated thing. Like I was like, I have nothing. Like I can't go to Dollarama after the end of this month. I can't buy Christmas presents for my family. And it was like this like step into this like complete poverty and total uncertainty of like, it was like I was walking into my life and I couldn't see any kind of picture in front of me of what the future would look like, of how things were going to be, of what would happen, of how things were going to turn out, because it felt like there was nothing to hold on to there. And it was the kind of crying, which I rarely do. I mean, I'm crying now, but like the rarely, like, where it's like just nonstop for the whole day, like so much. So my face was, I don't know if you found this, Catherine, my face was so swollen. I was like, an alien, right? And then you wake up the next day and it's like, you try and open your eyes and they're like swollen.
Your eyelids are like thick. Yeah.
Totally. Your face
Yeah.
hurts from like having so much.
Yeah.
Or
Or
Like the
eyeballs
crying
feel
headache.
Like you've like put the
Yes.
hydrogen peroxide. Like,
Yes, that's right. Exactly.
Yeah.
So it's not a
Yeah.
pretty picture. Anyways,
Yeah.
but it was like, it was very interesting to feel that. And then like, I feel like for me, it's just always a progressive letting go, right? Like a progressive letting go of trust in myself and like having to trust in the Lord for like, however, because I am very much like, I like to have things like control or to know what's going on or things like that. So it's like, sometimes he just has to like pry things from my fingers. And I have given him permission to do this, even though like I'm still going to be grasping onto it.
Yeah.
Anyways, so it's like these like, these deeper places of trust. But I mean, in the end, even for that, it was like, because of that, I was able to talk to Healthcare Connect, where they connect you with doctors, and actually talk to a person who happened to work at my insurance company. Like she had worked there before, so she knew how terrible they were. And then she was able to connect me with a doctor that day. And then I got to, so it was like the Lord brought so much out of that. So then when you were talking about that, I was like, oh yes, I've had that crying experience. But even this last week, I was praying a lot with the passage where Jesus talks about, if you have faith, you could say to this mountain, like, go in the ocean, and it would do it. Like if you had faith the size of the mustard seed. I'm like, that's a really scathing indictment of all of us. Like, yeah,
because all of us are going to be like, oh yeah, obviously I can't do that.
That's right.
For sure.
Exactly.
Like,
that's it. Like there are still mountains on Earth. So then obviously it's not like,
it's not like flat, there's one place with like a few mountains in the water and like, oh, some holy people must have lived here.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. Well, that must be holy people come from the prairies then, because there's no right. So just saying, I know, right? Anyways, but it is true, right? Like that's what it makes me think of, is like it's not in the times when there's prosperity that we recognize our dependency on the Lord, or the fact that we don't actually have faith that he is going to provide for us, or that he's, good father, good husband, or whatever.
Yeah. No, that's so true.
That makes me think too, Erin, like one thing that I were coming to before I got sort of the TA position that filled in that last slot, when I was still like, I don't have enough, and just kind of living that not enoughness was, I was like, okay, like, and I think there's an important distinction between what can become prosperity gospel and God's providence, right?
Right. Yeah.
And I think for me, what that looked like was I started to realize I was like, Jesus, like, what does it mean to trust you right now that you'll provide for me? And I came to the kind of realization that I'm trusting that you're either going to provide for my financial needs, like you'll provide the money I need, or you'll provide the emotional strength I need to get through this difficult time.
Right.
And I kind of realized like either of those things will work.
Right.
And that'll be okay. And that to me was what made Providence make sense to me, because I actually knew that he would do either of those things, because I could tell that I was like, it was really tough, and I was like quite anxious. Like I had some of my most anxious periods I think I've ever had during this time. But like at the same time, there was this deeper, like as deep as you can get, this deep core of like I'm not forgotten, right? And I think that's where it came from, was just knowing that the Lord would provide what I needed, either of those things, And then honestly, when this TA position thing worked out and I actually did have enough money, I was like, almost, it was anticlimactic. I was expecting something more grand.
That's right.
And then it was like, oh, everything's okay. Everything's fine.
Yeah. Which is so funny.
I think that's really key. And it's something like what you're saying, Kevin, about trust in providence is not, I trust that I'm going to get all the money and win the lottery and everything is, because I think that's a hard part for me when I think about God's providence, because I know people who are really struggling and for whom they don't know where the next meal is going to come from. And maybe, there's limited things that I can do to help or whatever it is. And not a lot of support. And it's like, what does God's providence mean for folks like that? I don't know. And it's a hard question that I to be honest, I still feel like I sit with. It's like a question that I have in my heart and that's not answered, because I just see sometimes like the suffering and the struggling. And I'm like, Lord, why aren't you the one who cares for the orphans and the widows? Like, isn't that your reputation and what you claim to be in the scripture? Like, what about these people?
Yeah.
And it's such a hard thing.
Hmm.
So when you're saying, you know, providence is not just material needs, although we have to trust that that's going to happen to some extent, but it's like that the Lord will give the grace in the situations that we experience in life, because life is so unpredictable. Which is still hard, you know. It's and it's something that Nathan and I have been talking about too, in that, you know, so we've gotten married, and of course there's two people getting married, and you're going to have different, like we have basically opposite styles of and approaches to finance, although we come on the same page and we make our budgets together. But it's been a real learning experience for me of just like realizing like, oh, I did put a lot of security or a lot of stock in my own kind of frugality and stinginess, and being like, well, but he, you know, if I'm the saver and he's a spender, and okay, yes, we're working together, but still, like, I have this tendency to be very, very, you know, stringent, and like, how is God going to provide for us if we're not like saving every penny? And I had this like experience in prayer the other day where it was like, the Lord was like, well, sort of chuckling at me and was like, did you somehow have the impression that I provided for you in your life because you were stingy? Like, do you think it was because of you? Like, and like,
so great.
And I was just so like, oh yeah, I thought that. And it was just like, the Lord's like, I provide for my children.
I love it when
some
Jesus
of them are
laughs
savers
at us
and some of them are spenders. Like, that's not what it's about, you know? And so it's been like, and then every time that I'm worrying about like, how are we going to do this? How are we going to whatever afford this or whatever? Cause like we're in the US and everything's expensive for having children and medical care and everything. And it's just feels impossible. And even as soon as I say that, I'm like, wait, what does the Lord say? Cause I start just freaking out in my mind. But every time I do that and I come to the Lord, it's like, the Lord's like, here you are again, coming to me about finances. This is so great that you're coming to me now and remembering that I'm your security. You didn't used to do that. And I'm like, okay. Like, but
okay, I get the point. So stop doing it.
I understand now. But it's almost like he's reminding me, like he's building in me a habit and a virtue of even cognitively remembering I am not in control and I don't know what to do. And any illusion I had of my self-sufficiency before it doesn't make any sense when you're living a normal adult life. And okay, Lord, like you just have to be my security. And whatever that means, if that's providing for the physical things or providing for emotions, if we go through something that's really tough, like I just have to trust in him. But it's not, you know, it's like, it's a gift, but it's also like, like you're saying, Catherine, it drudges up the deepest stuff in us where we think we had it all together, you know.
It's like poverty, like whatever our poverty is goes hand in hand with dependence. Like poverty and dependence go hand in hand. So wherever there's a poverty that's in us, in our hearts or in our external situation, there's a dependency that has to be on God, you know, as much as we try and fix things ourselves. We all discover that's quite insufficient.
And then that poverty is like, they reveal to us the deepest level of reality, which is that we are fully dependent on God.
That's right.
That is the truest thing about our existence.
Yeah.
So our poverty helps to kind of shine a light on and give us a reality check of that. But I don't like it.
No, it sucks. It's interesting. Like I'm just thinking back to moments as I was working through all this. Like I remember talking, I think a big thing that was revealed to me, like the word purifying keeps coming to mind. Like there's something that's so purifying about when these material goods, whether it's money, whether it's a house, whether, I don't know what it is, right? But when these things are taken away from us, feel like they're taken away from us, it's purifying, which can be, we can react to that fire so many different ways, you know? And I remember talking to my boyfriend, Graham, and I about all this as I was like processing all these emotions and trying to figure out like what's really happening here, you know? And I were looking at in conversation once I looked up at him and I was like, Graham, I think I feel like if I don't take care of myself, nobody else will. And I was like, oh my goodness, like I think I believe this my whole life. I don't know why. I can't even pinpoint exactly the reason why. I know it's an area that the Lord wants to keep working at for me. But like, it was already freeing to say that and realize how not true it was. And it was really powerful to experience that with him. And like, we're planning to get married next summer. We're not engaged yet, but that's more of a formality. And yeah,
it's so great. We're getting married next summer, probably engaged in December.
It's so funny how commonplace these big romantic moments are sometimes. Like I'm just planning for it, but
yeah. Well, just get engaged. Like, how's Tuesday? Sure, Tuesday. Yeah. Like,
But like, I'm so glad that I had that realization with him, because I realized, oh, like I've like had a block in my heart towards him that I didn't want to let him in, because I didn't even realize I didn't want to let him in, and then I had to literally allow him to we were making budgets together, and he was like, Catherine, like we had initially had like a share, like he had a date night budget in his, and I had a date night budget in mine, and we tried to balance them in a particular way. And he was just like, Catherine, just like let me pay for all of it. And I was like, but like, okay. It was so humbling, and it was so beautiful, right?
Yeah.
And even like this money that I had saved up before I moved and started my master's, like it was getting close to enough for like a down payment on a small house in a city that's not Ottawa or not Toronto, right? But like I was thinking in my head, I was like, okay, if I'm good with money during my master's, like if I meet somebody, because I met Graham right when I started my master's, I was like, if I meet somebody, I'll finish my master's, maybe we're getting married by then, and I'll like pay for our wedding, for our house. And even with all of the ways the Lord has provided for my immediate needs this year, like I won't really have any savings left at the end of this year. And I had this moment again of realizing, like, it almost feels like this is like what the Lord wants. Like, it's like a fresh start, that like, we're going to start our life together, building a new life up together from the ground up. And like, maybe it's not the ideal. I would have loved to have had more saved up, but like, it's like helping us to start our marriage from a place of relying on what God can provide for us.
Yeah.
And I actually want that. Like, I want that more than feeling like we're coming in with guns blazing and everything we need to make it all work,
That's such a beautiful reality, because even when you're talking about that, I'm like, dependency, like seeing our own poverty, our own like need or whatever, and knowing that that's linked to dependency, like it reveals our dependency to us. It's like, it's not even about our dependency just on God. I mean, it is our dependency on God fully, but it's also mediated through human beings. Like, dependency opens us up to communion with other people. Like that's like that's like one of the big gifts about that, right? So like, even when you're saying like I have to do everything, like when you say that line, I'm like, yes, that is a movement in my heart all the time. It's like, nobody's gonna look after me, I have to look after myself, which is odd because I'm married to Jesus. So you think that you would think that would give some security in that, but oddly enough, it's like, and I mean, the Lord uses everything, right? So like, he's honestly been like chipping away at that in my own heart for a long time. But really, it's like, even in the experience of illness, or in the experience, financial stuff, or in the experience of like whatever it is, it's like that dependency in that total brokenness, like the Lord comes, but also other people come, or they should come, like that's part of what it means to be the body of Christ, which is really beautiful. But that's also, I mean, I think that's also a whole other episode about how painful that can be when other people do not come into and respond to that, bro. But that's another episode for a different day. Yeah.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. So interesting. I think too, one little thought as well is that I think it makes me look at tithing a lot differently. Like, because I feel like the Lord has provided my needs in a financial, material, practical way. But like, kind of like you were saying, Nicole, what about all the other people I know who don't have that happen? So it helps me to understand the call to help to give some of what the Lord gives us away, because I think right now it feels more like what I am making is actually from the Lord than it's
Mm.
felt before,
Yeah.
And so like it makes me, I guess it just makes me, I'm saying this, but I haven't actually changed my tithing habits. So like, I want you to know that I'm just thinking of this in the moment and there's some conviction here for me.
That's right.
But
So
like,
if you're in need of cash, just send us a message. We will forward that to Catherine. Yeah.
That's perfect, Erin.
You are welcome.
what a providential idea.
That's right. Oh,
But
that's
like
funny.
doesn't that make it
Yeah.
different a little bit when you actually feel like, oh, this is a
Yeah.
gift the Lord gave me. Other people need this gift too. Like,
Yeah.
Mhm,
Yeah.
mhm.
Yeah.
It's not mine, so
It's
let
not
me share
mine.
it
Yeah.
in as much as
Yeah.
it's prudent and whatever.
Yeah.
But having a generous
Yeah.
heart with that.
yeah.
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 Even what you were talking about before about like just like how the Lord has been acting in your heart through this, which is such a beautiful thing just to hear somebody say all those things out loud, because especially like when we're talking about providence and our poverty and all of those kind of things, whatever poverty, it's like, it just reminds me so much of Job. Like so much of what we see of the picture is like, it is an infinitesimally small part of like the Lord's plan for our life, that, and so like the Lord's
Yeah.
answer to Job and his suffering is not to explain his suffering. It's to tell him, were you there when I built all the mountains and carved out the seas? And like, were you there? Like, so like basically saying exactly that, but also like that it's like impossible to trust in providence if we don't trust that God is good. Like if we don't actually, so it's like, even like, this is like, as I'm hearing you talk about him, it's like, oh yeah, Catherine trusts that God loves her. Like that's what makes it possible even to like go into those thorny areas, which is really beautiful. Which is beautiful.
Yeah. Yeah, that is beautiful. Before we wrap up, and this has been such a good conversation, I feel like so many just like rich little things to ponder. If there's folks who are listening right now who maybe are going through something that's similar or in some way to what you've experienced, Catherine, I don't know if what would you say? What do you want to leave us with?
Oh my gosh.
Hit it out of the park. No.
I just want to give you a hug.
All right, so everybody put your face up to whatever screen you're listening from.
Yeah,
Catherine gives good hugs. Yeah.
I think the thing that comes to my heart, like, it's just that, like, to know that the Lord is with you as one who loves and cares and protects, and that his desire is to free you and to have a deeper experience of knowing his love for you, like, because it's so hard, it's so difficult, and like I can't think of one way to say like this is how you work around it, but I do believe that he is that constant lover, and that constant one that just never ceases wanting to be as close to you as he possibly can, and to have you as close to him as you possibly can be, because that is where like freedom and security lie.
Yeah.
If you can't see Catherine right now, she's got her head in her hand and she's feeling all the feelings, for all of our listeners. And I know the look where Catherine, she's just like, oh, like, it's the empathetic,
so great,
empathetic face hug.
It's always fun when we get to interview somebody that we know / are related to, because now this is like the third person from Nicole's family, because we had her parents for our first episode, and then
our
then
family
Catherine,
is full of suffering.
That's right. So next will come Cecile, so you can just send her this episode just so she's barely warned, and then
she doesn't know that
on
yet,
location in Ireland. That's what
that would be fun.
There you go.
That would be amazing.
Well, thank you, Catherine, for just sharing all of this with us. And be willing to just open your heart up to us on this topic. It was wonderful to talk with you.
Yeah.
Erin,
yes,
you have a God wink for us.
I do have a God wink. So yeah, so I get to do some formation with some women who are kind of in they're candidates for consecrated virginity. So, which is really fun. So it was like, I got to go back to a library, like a university library, and go in and peruse all of their books. And because the libraries here were closed to anybody who was not like a U of O student or St. Paul student or whatever. Right. So St. Paul's University here, Catholic University, they grant, canonical degrees, whatever. So, but now they're open. So I didn't realize that. So I got to go back and read like I had a stack of books, like probably 15 books high, of like writings of the church fathers and like all of these things, which is great. So I was going through that, and as I was going through it, I could feel after a while my brain just shutting down, because when you're reading like things that are dense or like you're just like, all right, that's enough. I am now dumb, and I will not re-smarten until tomorrow. And then so I was just leaving there. I was like, okay, Lord, I really would love to have a book. Like, I'm feeling overwhelmed. I wish there was like things and whatever. Anyway, so then I was just like looking later at some resources that this other consecrated virgin had said. And then I was looking up books, and there's a book called Christ and His Virgins that I was like, oh, that sounds awesome. It's probably old and not, because a lot of books about consecrated virgins are like no longer in print or they're whatever. Anyway, this is on Amazon. It was $10. So I was like, okay, great. Thank you, Lord. And it's got like everything, like all of the things from the right, all of the, because so often a lot of the books that speak about consecrated virginity are talking about religious life in general, which is good and helpful, but it's not about consecrated virginity in particular. So it's like the Lord just like laid this nice gift at my feet when I was like feeling despair about having to read the church fathers in depth for a week.
Right. So instead of you having to like,
yeah,
it's almost like instead of you having to read all the things so you could write that little book, the Lord's like, oh, somebody wrote it here.
That's right. Here's the thing. Yeah,
that
was
great.
Good. It was love.
That's great.
It was a lovely experience. Yeah,
that's great.
Yeah.
That's good. God provided for you.
He did. Oh, slam dunk. That was good.
That was a solid 6 out of 10, Nicole. Nice work.
Oh, yeah, I know. Thank you. That's right. That's my PhD,
Yeah.
All right. Okay, folks. Well, thank you for listening, and we look forward to you joining us next time.
Amen. And thanks again, Catherine. God bless you all.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of In the Thicket. If you like what you hear, give us a rating and hit that subscribe button. We have new episodes every Monday with more stories and honest conversations about life when the going gets rough, and the hope and humor amidst it all. We'd love for you to join our community on Instagram and Facebook at In the Thicket Podcast. While you're there, let us know how we can pray for you. God bless, and see you next week.